He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Now, I want you to notice something. You know, where I actually got this title, Have You Found Yourself? It's something that the Lord just brought to my attention one day when I was reading this verse in verse 17. It says, and Jesus was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah, and when he had opened the book, he did what? He found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. In other words, he found himself, didn't he? He found himself in the Word. And I got to thinking about that. I thought, wow, Jesus found himself. He opened the Bible to the book of Isaiah. Actually, it was Isaiah 61, because he was looking for himself, wasn't he? Jesus was looking for himself, and he found himself. In essence, Jesus opened it to that chapter, and he said, this is me. The Spirit of the Lord's upon me. And he quoted that verse to him. And then look at verse 20. Then he closed the book and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all who were in the synagogue were fixed on him. And he began to say to them, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. Then it goes on to say, he shares a few more things about, I think, about Elijah and the widow woman. And then you get down to verse 28. Look at verse 28. So all those in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath and rose up and thrust him out of the city. And they led him to the brow of the hill on which their city was built, that they might throw him down over the cliff. Then passing through the midst of them, he went his way. Wow. They were mad, weren't they? I don't just think they were mad because Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. It's very possible. I heard one minister teaching on this, and he said according to a Jewish tradition, so you can check that out and find out if that's true, but he said according to Jewish tradition, in verse 20 right here, where it says, then he closed the book and gave it back to the attendant and sat down, that's what really made them mad. Because according to Jewish tradition, in the synagogues back then, they kept a separate chair up there for the Messiah. They believed when the Messiah came back, he would actually sit down in that chair. And that was the chair that Jesus sat down in. He just said, hey, in the book of Isaiah, it says this about me. He found himself. He said, the Spirit of God's anointed me. And he went through those verses, and then he sat down in the Messiah's seat. And they got mad. They got so mad, the whole congregation